Oh, and I forgot to mention that the Japanese have a saying. When you want to intimidate somebody, you bring out the black ships, because that's what this admiral did. Admiral, God damn it, I can't remember his name. Don't record me.
Don't think about something else and it'll come back to you. I got a question for you. While you're talking about objects and antiques, mentally go through your apartment right now. Artwork, china, dishware, anything, picture different tables. What are some of the things that you have that have family significance to them? Or start with portraits. We'll go around your...
Well, my parents' portraits. My father flew in this Polish artist in 1974, I think it was, and had him paint a portrait of my father and my mother. So those are kind of precious. They're very large, oil paintings. There's a portrait of me by a fellow student, George Unger, in my class in Chautauqua. I went to that art class. He painted a portrait of me when I was 40, because it was 1978, yeah, 78. I would have been 40, yeah. What else do I have? Let's see, a nice antique table I gave to Andy and Heidi, an English turned, they called a barley twist leg with flaps, and two little other mahogany tables. What else have I got? Well, there are lovely photographs that I've had nicely framed in my bedroom of my mother, her mother, father, her three brothers. Then I have a reproduction of a portrait of my grandmother, but the original is in Warsaw in the National Gallery. A lovely portrait when she was in her early 30s in Paris. It was painted by Olga Boznajska, who's a well-known Polish sort of impressionist. She was sort of like a Mary Cassatt, but of Poland, a wonderful portrait painter. But that portrait's in Poland, but there's a reproduction. The furniture, no. Do I have any? Oh, a nice little bibelot table. Heidi likes the word bibelot. It's a little display table, very sort of thin little mahogany legs, and it's got a glass top. And I keep things that you guys made, or a little elephant that survived the burning of a safe during the Second World War. There was this little china elephant from, I've forgotten, it's from a famous company in Austria that made lovely china. And it's a little dancing elephant, and he was in a safe. And the house burnt down, and the safe burnt, and when they opened it, they found all the silver and stuff had melted, but the elephant had survived. So I have the little elephant. And I also have I think it's a not a penguin, the bird with the big thing here, Pelican. I always get penguins and pelicans mixed up. A pelican in all black, because it was also in that safe, I think, and it just turned black. And the wooden thing it was on just burnt. So that's in that little bibelot cabinet. And there's something you made, I think, something Roland made out of china and painted, a little skier. Otherwise, there's that bowl in the kitchen that is from India. It's a brass bowl that's hammered. And Mummy and I and Dad were in New Delhi together because there was a meeting of the International Monetary Fund that Daddy attended every year on behalf of Ethiopia, because he was working in Ethiopia at the time. And Mummy and I bought it in an Indian market. We didn't like touristy things. And so we bought this, which is something that the Indians use. And we had to smuggle it out of India because Daddy would have been mad that we have something heavy. So that's in the kitchen. And then I have some family silver spoons, whatever. But otherwise, the furniture, I know what, the Caribbean furniture, of course. At one point, Dad had a client who was half Turkish, half Greek, who had taken a ship called the Coronia. She was built as the Coronia by the same shipyard that built the original queens, the Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth, the John Brown shipyard in Glasgow. And this ship was built, I think, in the 1940s, 48 maybe. And she was known as the Green Goddess because she was painted green, and she was a cruise ship, and she'd come into New York Harbor, and my mother-in-law remembers her coming. The Green Goddess would come into the harbor. And then, she became kind of old-fashioned and was sold to this guy, what did I say, Constantinides? Mr. Constantinides. And he had her modernized. I mean, the fire regulations were stricter, so he had to have some kind of fire stuff put in between the paneling and the wall of the ship. And unfortunately, and he turned it into a cruise ship, not a transatlantic liner. She became a cruise ship. But on her maiden voyage, something happened. She blew a gasket, something exploded, a Turkish seaman was killed, And suddenly all the debts, he had hoped to pay off his debts slowly as the passengers began paying him and as, the ship began cruising. But unfortunately, everybody wanted their money all at once, and so all these liens were slapped on this ship, and that's when he needed a lawyer desperately. And Dad was known as, he was Admiralty lawyer, he was known as the lawyer of lost causes, because he liked causes like that. So he took on this problem of this ship. So she was disabled, and by then her name had changed. It was no longer the Coronia, she was the Caribia. And she was in New York Harbor, and the New York Harbor wanted to get rid of her because she was a big ship, she was taking up lots of room. And Dad managed for years to not have her ousted from her berth. And at one point the powers that be said, oh, there's not enough draft. She's got a deep, whatever, hull, there's not enough room there. So Dad and this Constantinidis guy had somebody go down with a fathoming, whatever, to measure how much room there was, and they said there's plenty of room. So we practically lived on that ship. I think you had a birthday party on that ship, remember? You invited all your friends, Trinity, and Roland was there, and we had a birthday party, and the kids loved it. And one thing that is on my conscience was that it was a little bit dark inside. We'd be walking, with these cabins on both sides, totally deserted, nobody there. And there was a room where there were these, they looked like brown mahogany coffins, but you'd get into them and I think you were steamed or something, there's steam or something coming at you. Well, we got two of Constantinidis' relatives, I think one was a nephew and one might have been his son, to hide in these things that looked like coffins. And there was like a thing here where you could look out, glass. And we went in there with you guys, I think my mother-in-law was with us, and it was kind of semi-dark. And as you started walking through this room with these coffins, suddenly the top would open like this, and you were terrified, and you and Roland just sprinted out with us in hot pursuit trying to explain to you that it wasn't Dracula or Frankenstein in these coffins. But I felt so terrible afterwards. How could I do this to my children? So anyhow, so we had a lot of fun on the ship. Oh, before I'd mentioned Debbie Reynolds, I forgot to mention that when she was in that play, musical, Blue Gown, she was interested in getting something off the ship. People would come and ask if they could buy things from this ship, because she was full of furniture, pianos, organs, whatever. And Debbie Reynolds, at that point, wanted to buy an apartment at the Des Artistes, where your dad was the president of the board. So she made a date with me. It was winter. So I turned up and we went on the ship. She was in a mink with high heels. Thank goodness I had low heels. The decks were frozen. There was water on them. They were frozen. She was slipping and sliding. I was hanging on to her. We went through the whole ship and she said, yes, I want this and I want that, I want this. She wanted the grand piano. So she wanted the grand piano, she wanted this furniture, that furniture. Well, the whole thing came to naught because it turned out her financial advisor says, you can't afford it, or maybe she was turned down by the board or something. But anyhow, she didn't have the money, whatever. So that all fell through. But it was kind of fun traipsing through with Debbie Reynolds. I think she's still alive, isn't she? Debbie Reynolds is still alive, yeah. It'd be fun to meet her. She was always very hyper. She never came down to sort of our level. She was always like this, always acting.
Random change of subject. Tell us about what foreign languages you speak, and say a couple sentences in different
Well, I had to, at one point, Constantinidis, he wanted to repair the ship. He was hoping to save the ship. He was hoping to save it and refloat, use it again as a cruise ship. So he brought in some workers from Spain. So I had to go and translate because they could, and they were so embarrassed because they were complaining about the toilets not functioning. And they didn't want to tell me that because they were kind of embarrassed. So I had to translate that backwards and forwards about toilets and other things that weren't functioning. Okay, languages. All right. Well, I've spoken Polish since I was born. I can't remember learning English. I must have been 3 by then. I don't remember having any problem learning English at all. So I'm bilingual. My education was in English mainly, except for the 2 years in Switzerland where we had to speak French every day. So I'm bilingual and no problems with English. In fact, if I was asked to explain grammar rules in Polish, I wouldn't be able to because I picked it up in the most primitive way possible. Just by hearing my parents speaking, I picked it up. But I wouldn't be able to explain the grammar to you. So I'm bilingual Polish, English, and then French acquired language, and I had French nuns at my school, Manor House School in Finchley in England, from the age of 9 till I was 15, and then the 2 years from 15 to 17 I was in Switzerland. And then I learned Spanish. I started Spanish at London University. At the same time as I was doing Latin and French, I learned Spanish. And I went to, when I was 18, I went for a few months as part of the university, course to Spain, and I had to find a place to live. So I always remember the name of this lady. I found her advertisement on a board somewhere at London University, Senora Aurelia Perez, and she has this lovely apartment, and she described it in glowing colors and the lovely food and everything. And I arrived there, was just before Easter. It was cold, and she was stingy. The only heat was a brasero. There was a table, and there was a brasero underneath it with a little carpet over it. And to get warm, you had to sit like this and put the carpet over your knees and heat your legs. And then she only allowed us to have a bath once a week. And you had to give her a day's notice because she had to, I don't know, bring in the wood or something to charge up the boiler to heat the... And I only had this much water in the bathtub as it was, so I'd sit there. And, I was in Madrid, which was kind of a bit dusty maybe. And so, I'd be sitting in water up to here. And I had a boyfriend then. He was French, sort of French-German. I spoke French to him. And he took me to the Prado. And at one point, I'm looking up like this at one of the beautiful Goya paintings, and he says, "Oh, Elisabeth, ton cou est sale. Your neck is dirty." Because I was up like this. I didn't realize when I sat in bathwater up to here, I was washing like this, but I didn't wash my neck. It's all dusty. And as long as I was like this, it didn't really show. It looked like a suntan. But the minute I raised my head to look at the Goyas, there were these white lines where the creases were. So that was humiliating. Anyhow, but he still was my boyfriend. Pierre, his name was Pierre. Anyhow, so...
Let's hear a little bit. I want to hear you speak. Why don't you tell us what you did at the cenote the other day, but tell it to me in Polish.
Jak się mówi cenote po polsku, nie bardzo wiem. No cenote, to jest jak gdyby taka warstwa, która się złamała i pod spodem jest woda, słodka woda, ona wolno płynie do morza. I tam są jak gdyby takie małe, naturalne pływalnie i tam są rybki i jest dżungla naokoło i tam można chodzić i się płaci, nie wiem, $3-4 i można tam sobie pływać. Woda jest zimniejsza niż w morzu, ale bardzo przyjemna woda. No i teraz ostatnio byliśmy w takiej cenocie, co się nazywa Eden, tak jak ogród Adama i Ewy. I tam sterczy taki duży kamień, sterczy do tej wody i ta woda jest może 5 metrów niżej i można do niej wskoczyć. I mój syn kazał mi tam wskoczyć. I ja wskoczyłam. Trochę potem mnie bolały tu ręce, były czerwone, ale trzymałam tak nos, żeby mi woda do nosu nie weszła, więc ja musiałam chyba wodę uderzyć tak i potem była tutaj czerwona taka linia. No i było, a mój mały Johnny, mój mały Juanito, mój wnuk, syn mojego syna Johna, on ma, 7 lat, 7 years old, 7 and a half, prawie ma 7 i on wskoczył i mój syn wskoczył chyba 4 razy. I myśmy go sfilmowali, zdjęcia zrobiliśmy. Tak, ja bardzo lubię syn. Co?
I'll edit in some pictures of you jumping.
Okay, all right.
Now, tell a truncated version of that in French.
En français, tu veux que je décris? Bien, alors c'est noté, c'est un genre de piscine naturelle dans la jungle où le sol est comment dit-on limestone en français, de calcaire, c'est effondré. Alors la pierre s'est effondrée dans l'eau et l'eau coule très très lentement vers la mer et l'eau est assez rafraîchissante, c'est de l'eau fraîche. Et il y a des poissons, moi j'ai même vu des poissons de cette grandeur, puis il y a des petits poissons qui mangent la peau morte sur les pieds, c'est assez agréable, on s'assoit comme ça, si on ne bouge pas, les petits poissons viennent manger la peau morte. Et les gens font du scuba diving, snorkeling, j'ai fait du snorkeling, et c'est très pittoresque parce qu'il y a comme j'ai dit, il y a la jungle autour de nous, et Et les gens font du scuba dans le même endroit où les gens sautent. Je crois qu'en Amérique, nous sommes beaucoup trop conscients de la sécurité. On ne laisserait jamais un endroit comme ça où il y a des gens dans l'eau, il y a des gens qui sautent dessus. Voilà.
Good. And quickly, even a more truncated in Spanish.
No. No puedo, es demasiado difícil. Un cenote es muy agradable para nadar. Es un lugar donde el sol se rompió y las piedras caen en el agua y hay un lago de agua fresca que corre muy despacio en la dirección de la mar. ¿Okay? Et on peut maintenant je dis, ahora hablo en francés, mezclo los idiomas. Y se puede nadar, y uno paga 60 pesos, creo, para nadar, y es muy natural, totalmente natural, no hay restaurantes, no hay, no hay algo que destruye la sensación de en la jungle. ¿Cómo dice un jungle?
Selva.
Selva? La selva is jungle?
Good, perfect. You passed the test. We believe that you speak now in Italian, now in Arabic.
Non posso italiano, non posso. Figlio mio, prego, non me torturas. The names of my 3 sons. Well, John was the firstborn, so we thought it was, the right thing for him to be named after his father. His father's John Stratford Rogers Sr., so my first son was John Stratford Rogers Jr. The second son, Roland, was named Roland because I was sitting at a little desk that had belonged to my husband's family, teeny little desk, and I think I must have been pregnant. And a little visiting card fell out from one of the little drawers, and it said Roland Hartley. So I asked my husband who this is, and he said, oh, that was my great uncle. He was the governor of the state of Washington. And Hartley is a family name. Now, my husband's brother was named Hartley, but using it as a first name as opposed to a surname, Hartley, and his son is Hartley also. So my father-in-law was Hartley, his son was Hartley, and his son was Hartley, Hardy or Hartley. Okay, and Roland I liked because it's a nice name, and I'd also studied La Chanson de Roland. When I was at university in London, I had to read La Chanson de Roland in the original medieval French. And it appealed to me that Roland and Olivier, Roland was the nephew of Charlemagne, he was retreating from Spain, and Roland and his sword Durandal, whatever, had to protect them from an attack by the Muslims. The Muslims were attacking from the south, and he had to save, the army. So I like the name Roland. So we named Roland. And then Andy, I love the name Andy because my brother's name was Andrew. And Andy's son is also Andy, but they call him Drew. They don't call him Andrew, they call him Drew. Yeah, so that's the history.
I know you've mentioned some of it, what other blood relatives do you have that are alive right now in 2014? I think Poland, England, where do you have blood relatives? Names, where they are, any?
My blood relatives. I have one in England who's a second cousin, third cousin. She's my third cousin, I suppose, yeah. No, my father and her mother were first cousins, so we're second cousins. Marysia Jankowska. Her family's the Grabski family. That's a whole chapter. She's from the Grabski family, and so is my grandmother. So we're second cousins, and we lived in the same house in England at Cranley Gardens from 49 or something, because I arrived in 46, so probably she arrived in 48, I think. So we were together until I left to be married in I left in 63. So that's the only blood relative I have in England. In Poland, I have a first cousin, Miś Żaboklicki, who lives in Gdańsk. He's my mother's nephew. His father was Żaboklicki, Jerzy, George. He was my mother's twin brother. So Miś and I are first cousins. He was the twin brother who was killed in the Katyn Forest massacre. And Miś is my age, and he's my first cousin. And his sons are my children's, they're second cousins, aren't they? Yeah. who else? Oh yes, Bożena near Warsaw, just below Warsaw, just south of Warsaw. Bożena Członkowska, her grandmother and my mother's mother were sisters. Her mother, let's see, my mother and her mother. So here's Bożena, here's me, my mother, her mother. Yeah, so the grandmothers, our grandmothers were sisters on the mother's side, maternal side, the Żaboklicki side. And then in Kraków, I have a cousin who's the grandson of here's my grandmother, here's her sister, here's me, here's Antek. So I am the granddaughter of Zofia Grabska, and Antek is the grandson of Halina. These two were sisters. Okay, so he's the one who took me to Cieszyn a few years ago to unveil the plaque that named my grandmother and her husband, second husband. And then he took me to Slovakia, to various nice places to visit. That's Antek Nikliński. Yeah, so they're all blood relatives.
Because everyone is alive right now.
And Maciej Grabski, wait a minute, in Warsaw, of course, Maciej Grabski, his father and my father were first cousins, so Maciej and I are second cousins, yeah. So he lives in a lovely pre-war house, big property, west of Warsaw, and his daughter, Małgosia, who married Jan Kidawa-Blonsky, so her name is Małgosia Kidawa-Blonsky, but her maiden name was Grabski, or Grabska, because the feminine version is Grabska, and she's the spokesperson for the government. So right now she's traveling with the new Polish president, because Tusk, what's his first name, I've forgotten, Donald, or anyhow, whatever, Tusk, became the head of the European Union. So we needed a new president in Poland. So this woman is a president, and she's the spokesperson. Małgosia is the same as Margaret. Małgosia is the spokesperson. So she's my children's. They are third cousins, correct? Yes. If Maciej and I are second cousins, my children and she are third cousins. Yeah, we visited Roland, his wife, Catherine, and the two children, Sophia and Tim, visited them in 2012. Yeah. And in spite of all her duties, she managed to make 2 great big apple pies for us, which we ate in their beautiful garden. Yeah. So those are my relatives. Yeah.
And tell me Sophia's name, the
Oh,
grandmother.
but wait a minute. In Florida, I have Kasia. In Florida, Kasia, who's my children's generation, lives in Delray Beach, and she has a son, Jonathan, who's in the performing arts. And her mother, Kalina, was from the Grabski family, and Kalina was my first cousin. Kalina, yeah, her mother. Kalina's mother and Marisha's mother were sisters, so they're closer. And my I'm getting all confused. Anyhow, she's my third cousin or something like that. And so, yeah, I visited her several times. And Kalina, her mother, was the only time I was ever a bridesmaid. I was then 10, and Kalina must have been 18 when she got married to Tomek Wasilewski. And it was the first time that I was first and only time that I was a bridesmaid. Yeah.
And Kalina's sister?
Kalina's sister Bożena I knew quite well too. She died quite a long time ago. She was also gay. You're thinking of Kasia's sister. So Kalina had 3 children. Her son unfortunately died in a car driving accident, and so that left them with Kasia, the youngest, who was a bridesmaid at my wedding, and her sister Marta, whom I'll be in Poland with in October and November of this year, 2014. Yeah, that's Marta.
All blood relatives alive in 2014.
Yes, I can't think of any other. Do I have any other brothers? Well, wait a minute. Eva Szeliga is related to me too. Sorry, I have Eva Szeliga, a lovely woman. She is because these people I was just talking about are descendants of Stanislaw Grabski. I'm a descendant of his sister Zofia Grabska. So these people are all related closer to each other than I am, but they're still my cousins because my grandmother and their grandfather were brother and sister. Yeah, so I'm here, they're here. So Kalina and Marta are all on this side of the family, descended from Stanislaw Grabski, who was the professor at Lwów and also the one mentioned by Churchill in his memoirs. Yeah, so they're descendants, and Marysia Jankowska, whom you knew in London, who still lives in London. So they're all on that side. He had 4 daughters, so these are all descendants. So yeah, so I'm related to them because of my grandmother.
What
Yeah.
about how far can you go back on both Irene, your mother's side, and your father's side with their parents?
Well, my father wrote a family history, and I must say I haven't studied in great detail. He goes back to the 1500s. He manages to trace the family back to the 1500s. On my mother's side, no, I don't know. Great-grandfather, that's about it. Great-grandfather.
And we've talked about that.
And I don't know what, maybe Mish would be able to tell me. Mish would probably be able to tell me. He once sent me a big picture showing my grandfather as a little boy, surrounded by all these elderly relatives. There was some wedding, and there's an elderly lady with a cross. Yeah, so he would probably be able to tell
Hang
me.
on.
Oh, no, okay.
Who's out here? We're being interrupted. Who's there? Come out and say hi to Babsha, Jenny. Oh,
Jenny, come on.
come on out.
Jenny.
Jenny just got home from school.
Oh, Jenny, come
We'll
here.
send her out later.
Oh,
Jenny just came back from her maternal class. And hang on, you know, let's cut here for a minute.
I have to practice
So
it.
Miss
That's
Nydia, the
adorable.
woman who does it,
Are they
is
doing-
a hair cutter.
Is she doing this to give you the hint that her hair should be
Probably.
tidier or something? Is the battery working?
Yeah. Who's that? Jenny. Whoop, she's running away.
I think both.
Yeah.
Let's you stand back a little bit. I'm just
It
running
needs to be
down.
tidier for
Yeah.
school. You know,
Here's
it
our
gets in
little
the girl.
girl. She's
way.
being shy.
And then they just
Come on out and say hi to
my
Babsha.
friends have told me in the past.
Can you come
not
share
just
some
at the
Cheetos
school,
with Babsha?
Yeah.
They every time the kids go to school, they come home with all this done
Really?
up hair. And she's the only girl. that
And they
comes
do it
to
during
her.
the class or at the end
I
of the
think
class?
so.
During the class.
Just while I sit and read.
Jen?
While we were taking a break, you recalled something.
Yeah.
What do you want to say?
About 10, 15 minutes after, I couldn't remember 2 names. The name of the lode of silver, this huge, the biggest lode of silver I think ever discovered in the western states. It was somewhere on the border between Nevada and California, and it was called the Comstock lode. And the second name that I was having trouble with was not Admiral, it was Commodore Matthew Perry, who commanded the American fleet of ships that went to intimidate the Japanese and open up Japan to trade and whatever, commerce. And when I was giving the tour to a group of people at the Historical Society, and I stopped in front of that presentation, silver given by the New York Chamber of Commerce to Commodore Perry, a Japanese man said, "Oh, well, now I know where that expression comes from about the black ships," meaning to intimidate somebody. And of course, because those are the colors of the ships that Commodore Perry arrived in. They were black, and they instilled fear in people. Okay, so I forgot. So now what was I talking about?
I'm going to ask. I just want to add a couple thought crossed my mind. I want to ask you. I'm going to go down one by one your grandchildren's names and tell me the last time you were with them and what you were doing and just what comes to mind. So let's Sophia.
Sophia, the last time I saw her was in Manhattan about just before school began. She came in with her parents and Timothy, her brother, in order to buy knapsacks for school and school supplies and school clothing, of course, for a girl of 16, the second year of high school in New Rochelle. The most important thing, the clothes. So she showed me the nice clothes she'd bought, and I said to Catherine, wasn't it simpler when kids wore uniforms? And Sophie said, well, they didn't like wearing them. I said, no, I liked wearing a uniform in school. Both my schools had uniforms. Not my Swiss school, though, but the 2 English schools had uniforms. So that's when I also saw Timmy. And I hadn't seen them all summer. They were in camps. Sophia, for weeks, was in a camp in New Hampshire, to which she'd gone last year, and Timmy joined her there. And Timmy went to 2 camps. One was a Boy Scout camp, and one was a skateboarding camp. And I saw pictures of them, but I really didn't see them all summer.
How about Drew?
Drew, I saw on the catamaran, because Andy and Heidi invited me to join them. This would have been, when was this? Sometime in September. They invited me to join them in Watch Hill, which is a lovely resort, small resort in Rhode Island. And that's where they were anchored, in the bay. And there's a lovely sort of a sliver of land going out into the sea, and it's a beach. It's a lovely beach. On one side it's sort of tranquil, where the boats are moored, and the other side is rougher, the Atlantic. And I just had a lovely time with them, 3 nights and 4 days. And their cabins are really like just a mattress. I mean, each cabin has a sort of queen-size mattress in it, and that's it. And there's a small area for clothes, and some clothes can hang, and some clothes are in a sort of a drawer, a shelf, I think. So it's all very compact, very ship-shape, and the catamaran is quite broad. It looks new, but it's second-hand. They bought it used. So when I was there, they had a leak in the fuel tank, and they had problems with pumping out one of the sewage tanks. There are two of them there. But Andy took Drew and Evelyn fishing, and they'd catch fish. They'd come back saying that they caught an Atlantic flounder, but it was only 16 inches wide, and it has to be 18 inches before you're allowed to take it. So they put it back. They were very law-abiding. And Drew knows his fish very well. He showed me a brochure with different fish names. There are some fish I'd never heard of. Maybe I'd heard of a pollock, but they're different fishes that he manages to recognize, but I don't. And they seem to be, you know, acclimatizing themselves to living on a boat very easily. They play games. Evelyn's got all her, not all, but most of her horses. She has several stablefuls of horses that she plays with. And Drew plays on his little iPad. He plays games, and the two of them play games on these iPads. And they do a lot of swimming, and as I said, fishing. And Andy sent a picture of Evelyn's first day at school. And it's a picture of the sky, and against the sky is this tall aluminum mast of the catamaran, and halfway up is Evelyn in a little bosun's chair. That's her first day at school. So they're having a sort of hands-on education, and they're going to be homeschooled. I don't know how they'll have time to homeschool them, because there's always something you know, to do with the boat. But Heidi manages to cook very nice meals in her tiny little, what is a kitchen on a boat called? A galley, isn't it? Isn't that the name of a kitchen on her galley? Which is, you know, above level. She doesn't have to go down anywhere. So it's a very livable boat. Very livable, very pleasant.
And I'll ask you about Johnny and Jenny, but you know what? You can work that into. Tell me where you are right now.
Right this minute. Right this minute. It's October the 1st. Tomorrow I'm leaving for New York. It's my last day at Puerto Aventuras, which is just north of Tulum. It's south of Cancun. A couple of hours drive, wasn't it, from Cancun? 1 hour?
Hour and a half.
Just 1 hour and a half drive south of Cancun. So I arrived on the 23rd of September. So I will have been here 9 days. And it's lovely being here. And I'm sitting on the porch. Behind me is a lovely swimming pool and lovely palm trees and oleanders and butterflies and funny little animal called an agouti that crosses the lawn occasionally. And yesterday we had 3 or even 4 friends of Juanito's, and they were playing in the pool, rampaging with John, my son, and the dad of 2 of the girls, and we had stuff to eat by the pool. It was very, very, very pleasant.
And what are some of the things you've been doing over the last week with Jenny?
I've been reading books to her. We took her to school one day. I took photographs of her in the class. She's got 4 boys in her class, and she's the only girl. And here is Johnny. Johnny, you want to come into the stand here? I'm talking about my grandchildren.
Right.
Can you see? Come closer to me. This is Johnny. He's 6.5. He's John's son. He's just come back from school. He's been doing not Taekwondo. What's the name of the martial art?
Hapkido.
Hapkido?
Hapkido.
Hapkido. He's just been in Hapkido. He got a bloody nose, but it's okay now. And they go to a very nice school here. Both he and his sister, Jenny, go to a very lovely little school where half the day they study in Spanish and half the day in English.
Johnny, where are we going tonight for dinner? Whoa, don't touch the camera. Come on, Johnny. No. Okay, go back inside.
Goodbye.
All right, that was Johnny.
Pizza and ice cream.
We're going to go to Paparazzi Pizza. Very good. And with Johnny, what have we been doing?
Oh, we had fun at the cenote. Johnny was very brave. He jumped in. I was kind of scared, but there were people watching, so I had to jump in. So it's wonderful what shame makes one do. So yeah, so Johnny jumped in, and Jenny didn't quite like it, so she went in once. But the water is chillier than in the ocean. Oh, we went to the beach off the Omni Hotel. There's a very, very lovely beach. The water is lukewarm. It is so warm, and there's a breakwater which stops the waves, but the waves aren't very big anyhow. And you can go snorkeling, and there are little fish in the water, patches where there's a few rocks and some algae growing. So it's a very pretty spot. And they have captive dolphins, but they swim in an enclosure that gets constant fresh water from the sea. It goes around this island. So part of this circle is dolphins, and they're manatees, and what else? Some other fish. But we also saw wild rays, spotted rays swimming, and we never found the what's that creature? The moray eel. There's a moray eel that lives at the outlet where the water goes back into the sea. We'll have to go there and find the moray eel.
Tell us about what big event were you involved in just before you flew down here?
Oh yeah. For over a month, I was working for the People's Climate March on September the 21st, just 2 days ahead of the big meeting at the UN, the global meeting about climate change. And it's to unite people who are worried about what climate change is doing, and to show the leaders of the world that the people, the ordinary people, want them to do something, to, cap the emissions of carbon dioxide, to do something to stop climate change, which is threatening life everywhere. On every part of the world, every square inch of the world is threatened by climate change. So I had a T-shirt that said People's Climate Change. My friend Barbara Ward in my building had an orange T-shirt. I had a blue one. We had placards, we had posters, we had little flyers, we had buttons. And for a month we, hi Jenny. Oh, is that your belly button?
Guest visitor here. Go walk over to Babsha. Run.
Come here.
Go get right up to Babsha.
Okay, we're on camera. Turn around. We're on camera.
Okay, who's this?
This is Jenny Jumpkins.
Jenny, what's your name?
You take that out of your mouth. You can't speak with that in your mouth.
Jenny.
Jenny, what's your full name?
Jenny Rio.
Jenny Rio. Roger, Zara. What's your school grade?
Venetia.
Miss Nydia, that's your teacher. What class are you in?
Venetia.
What's the name of your class?
What name is class?
Is it maternal?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Is that kindergarten? No, it's before
she's 2.5,
kindergarten.
so I don't even know.
Yeah, so it can't be
Yeah.
kindergarten. So it's like
Jenny,
preschool,
what
yeah.
did you do in school today?
Nursery school. Nursery school.
You painted? Show me your hands.
Painted, tell Daddy.
Show me your hands. What color are they? They're green.
No.
Show us your hair. Turn your head side to side. They did little beautiful pigtails. Who did that in your class?
Venetia.
Miss Nydia did that?
What's this?
That's from the table. Put it. Don't lose it. You see, it came off the leg of the table. It's got to be put back. Don't lose them.
So you guys excited? We're all going out for pizza tonight at Paparazzi? Did you have?
Yes.
Don't mess with the camera. Johnny, tell the camera quickly. What did you do? Here, I'll look you up. Johnny, go with Babsha so you can be on the camera. Go tell what you did this visit with Babsha. Don't block her. I want to see her too.
Okay.
What did we do on this visit?
Nothing.
Nothing?
We did nothing. We didn't leap off a cliff in a cenote. We didn't fight with all the friends in the swimming pool yesterday. We didn't go to the Chez Celine in Playa del Carmen and have nice pastries and croissants with vanilla cream in them. We didn't do that. And we didn't go to Latitude and have all kinds of lovely food. We didn't do that. Okay, we didn't do all that.
Okay.
That's the voice goes in there. So we must have,
my dad?
from me, my voice goes in there, and then it goes somehow into it gets recorded. Don't touch it.
Okay, thanks guys. Thanks for visiting.
Yeah, you are bad boy.
I forgot what we were talking about.
You are such a bad boy.
You want to know about my grandchildren?
There they are. All there. I lost track of what we were talking about.
Well, I talked about all the grandchildren, and Andy and his catamaran are sailing down the coast of America, heading towards Virginia, and yesterday, I think, or the day before, they passed Manhattan, which looks pretty gloomy, and that's where I'm going back tomorrow. It looks pretty gloomy and unpleasant, and they're dressed in, last I saw them, they were in swimsuits, and this time they're in jackets because it must be chilly.
Oh, so tell me, you go back to New York, you're going to be there for 2 weeks. What are you going to do when you go back, and then where are you going?
Oh, October 14th, I fly to London, Kuwait Airlines, and I'll be with my second cousin, Marta Doggett, from the Grabsky family. I'll be with her in Pimlico, London. I'll be looking at family photos because she can't recognize a lot of the people, so I'll help her. And then October the 22nd, we're booked to fly to Poland, where we'll be until November 21st, so that's about 5 weeks. And we both want to go to Poland, parts of Poland that we haven't seen before. So we'll go to they call it the Puszcza Białowieża, which is the sort of jungle with the wild bison, the original wild bison, the only remaining herd in Europe. So we'll do that, and we'll visit. I think I talked about this a day or two ago. Yeah, we'll be visiting cousins. Yeah, in this little museum about the Grabsky family, and so we'll be doing that. And then on the 21st, I fly back because on the 22nd, I have tickets for the State Theater. I'm not going to call it the David Koch Theater. It's the State Theater as long as I live. And I'm going to see a Russian ballet. I couldn't get tickets for the Bolshoi because they were $250, $300 and something. So I got tickets for another company that's following them, and it's got a name like Mikhailovsky or something. It sounds like Michael something, Mikhailovsky Ballet, and they're doing the same ballet as the Bolshoi, Don Quixote. So I've got tickets for that.
And just to randomly put things in sort of current events perspective, what's happening right now with Russia and Ukraine? So what are the headlines over the last few months?
Well, I mean, Russia is pushing into the Ukraine, creating a lot of unrest. I think Putin would like to, he's got delusions of grandeur. He thinks he can, divert people's attention away from their bad financial situation of Russia, and he's going to try to get the Russian Empire back. So countries like my country, Poland, and the Baltic states are kind of shaking a bit. They're trembling a bit because Putin is behaving like the autocrat of old. We thought that kind of leader was gone, after the Second World War. We didn't think that a leader would be blatant enough to just take over land by force, European land. So, a good part of the Ukraine was once Poland, Lvov and the western part. So
that's what's going on right now there. What about what's happening with America and this group in the Middle East, ISIS?
Well, ISIS is trying to create a caliphate across Syria and Iraq, and they want Sharia law, and they're beheading people. They're being yes. That's where my voice goes in. That's
my dad.
Your dad put that there, yeah.
Oh.
A little interruption.
And so again, ISIS is doing what?
Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. They're trying to establish a caliphate and have Sharia law and have Quran rule everything. And it's sad. They're going backwards. They're really going backwards.
What's the United States doing about it the last week?
Well, I haven't been reading the newspaper, but I've heard that the United States is bombing Syria. And I don't know how they choose their targets because they really don't have any people, intelligence people in Syria, since Syria is an enemy. I don't quite know how they choose their targets, but I've been sort of out of that. I've been so busy helping to organize this People's Climate March. We had 31,000, no, what did we have? 31,000 people marching? Is that possible? No, sorry.
300,000.
Sorry, 311,000. That was it. We were expecting 100,000. We had 311,000 people. I even heard somewhere 400,000, but I think it's rather...
It was the
biggest sort of march
in
New York City history. It was a huge march.
And what was the scary headline we woke up to this morning? Something to do with...
Oh, Ebola. There's somebody in America who got Ebola in West Africa, was in touch with children, and is now in America, probably, in quarantine. So
Hopefully,
hope he's the
family
only one.
members who are watching this from the future aren't walking around in hazmat suits and dealing with the after effects of a worldwide plague. That's got everyone scared.
And I just saw a documentary on the internet about, I don't know who that guy is who did the documentary, who he is. Whom is he funded by, I wonder? Anyhow, he did this documentary about Liberia. It's just a hellhole. The aftermath of the Civil War, where that guy Doe, I think he was the first leader who was actually born. Is that correct? Doe was actually like a native Liberian as opposed to one of the Liberians' descendants of slaves who were sent over after the war, the War of Independence. Yeah.
That's where the Ebola is from, Sierra Leone.
Sierra Leone in Liberia, and then this guy called Charles Taylor ousted Doe, and somebody said maybe he even ate him. And there's cannibalism in that part of Africa. And one of the warlords interviewed in this program admitted that he would take a young, like a toddler, split him down the back, take out his heart, cut it into pieces, and give it to his soldiers. And he'd also kill an infant and let his soldiers drink the blood. Can you imagine? And he just described this the way you and I would say, oh, I went and bought a few pork chops, at the butcher's.
What are some other big stories globally? Just what else is happening around there? China, Antarctica.
Well,
Europe.
things are melting. Glaciers. California has a terrible drought for years. Frightful drought. The latest National Geographic goes into great detail about the results. They're digging wells, but the wells are depleting the aquifers, and the land is subsiding. When you deplete the groundwater, the land subsides. That might trigger earthquakes. There's less snow than ever in the Sierra Nevada, and that's where they get their fresh water from. So, I think 65% of the land that we depended on for agricultural products is seriously threatened. I read somewhere that some people are even considering cutting down their almond orchards. They have no water left to water them with. It's scary. It's really scary.
Now, what else? We've covered a lot of topics. Is there anything else that we haven't thought of that we'll maybe shoot some more in New York? We can visit you at some point, and when you come back down here in January, February. We've done family trees, Poland, England, wartime, marriage, children, grandchildren, your work history. Oh, you know what? Momentito, Armando's here.
Oh,
He took care of having your shorts.
should we turn it off? Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
I don't have the